So previously what we just did was being able to take information and create a function. Now that we're given a function and a graph, we should be able to select those transformations. So transformations are just a fancy way of saying changes that occurred to our graph. So for example, I see that my k value, right, is 3. And when my k value is 3, that means that I'm moving up. I see that my graph moves up 3 units. So that means I have a vertical shift up 3 units. And my h is equal to a positive 2, meaning I moved right 2 units. Additionally, when we talk about our a value, or that value in the front, our a value is a -2. So when we have a -2, that means we have a couple of things that are happening. What we call when our a value is negative, we call that a reflection. And we call that a reflection over the x-axis. So our graph flips over the x-axis. So it goes from positive to negative. Let's do that in a different color. So when our a value is negative, we have a reflection over the x-axis. But that's not all. When our a value is greater than 1, we have a thing that's also called a stretch. So think of like a piece of candy. When you have a piece of candy and when you stretch it or make it longer by 2 times as long, that candy thins out in the center. So when our graph is being stretched, our graph actually gets thinner. It goes inside. So when our graph gets thinner, we call that a stretch. By a factor of 2. All right. So what I want you guys to do here now is I want to talk about first our a value. So our a value here is positive. So we will neither have a reflection over the x or y axis, but our a value is 1/2. So what we call that is a shrink. So our graph gets wider. And we say this is by a factor of 1/2 or by a factor of 2. Now I want you guys to figure out the rest of them if we have a horizontal or vertical shift. Now that you guys have found it, hopefully you guys saw that the horizontal shift was 2 units to the left. And we can see that in the graph. We see that our graph moves 2 units to the left. And we also can see that because our h value is a -2. All right. Now let's talk about if we are given just a function instead. So when we're given a function, it's a little bit harder because we don't get the visual help, but we can still do it. So here we see that we have a horizontal shift comes from this inner portion. So we have a horizontal shift. And a horizontal shift, so yes, there is a horizontal shift. And we say that's a horizontal shift by 4 units to the right. That's because our h value here is a positive 4. So since our h value is a positive 4, remember that this portion flips and our negative becomes a positive. Our H value is a positive 4, while our K value is a positive 2. So since our K value is a positive 2, so we say yes, there is a vertical shift by 2 units up. Finally, our reflection comes from our A value, and our A value is 2. So since our A value is 2, there is no reflection, because a reflection requires that our A value to be negative. But there is a stretch by a factor of 2. So I want you guys to try this next one on your own. So using the information from up above, I want you guys to try the next one on your own and check with me if you get the right answer. So the horizontal shift, what you guys should have gotten is yes, there is a horizontal shift by 1 unit to the left. And yes, there is a vertical shift by 3 units down. And we see that there is a reflection and a shrink by a factor of 1/4. So those are the problems that we do have to go over. You have one problem to practice on your own.